The rain came down hard that night, slamming against the pavement like it was trying to erase what had just happened. Red and blue lights bounced off the concrete walls lining the industrial district on the edge of the city. Police cruisers boxed in an abandoned rail spur where the body had been found half hidden beneath a collapsed freight tarp, hands cuffed behind the back, face turned toward the iron house looming in the distance. Detective Elias Crow stood still as the scene unfolded, coat collar pulled high, eyes locked on the silhouette of the prison rising beyond the fog. Even from miles away, the iron house of no return dominated the skyline like a threat carved into stone. No one liked working cases this close to it. The victim was male, early 30s. No wallet, no phone, no visible gang markings. But the cuffs weren't police issue, and the marks around his wrists suggested he'd been restrained long before he was killed. A slow death. A deliberate one. Crow crouched beside the body as forensic techs worked silently around him. "What do we have?" he asked. "Cause of death looks like blunt force trauma," one tech replied. "But that's not the strange part." Crow looked up. "There's prison dust in his lungs, concrete residue, lime, same material used in the iron house cell blocks." Crow exhaled slowly. That wasn't possible. The iron house didn't release people. It absorbed them. Officially, the prison was a maximum security correctional facility built decades earlier, during a time when crime rates were rising and politicians promised order at any cost. Unofficially, it was something else entirely. A place judges referenced in hushed tones. A destination defense attorneys fought like hell to avoid. People said once your name entered its registry, the world forgot you. Crow had grown up hearing stories about it. Kids in his neighborhood dared each other to drive past its outer walls at night. Parents used it as a warning. Behave, or you'll end up there. The gates were legendary. Iron slabs reinforced with steel ribs, rising higher than a 3-story building. Cameras everywhere. No windows at ground level. No sound escaping. Not screams. Not alarms. Nothing. And now a man was dead at its doorstep. The victim's fingers were curled tight, as if frozen mid-resistance. Crow noticed something scratched faintly into the concrete near the body. Not words, just a symbol. A crooked line intersected by another. He'd seen it before. 10 years earlier, during his first year as a detective, Crow worked a missing persons case. A low-level offender sentenced to 5 years inside the iron house. No parole. No contact. 2 months later, the man vanished from prison records entirely. Not transferred. Not deceased. Just erased. The only trace left behind was the same symbol, carved into a visitation room bench before the prison cut visits entirely. Crow stood and looked toward the prison again. The iron house had been built to enforce order through terror. That was no secret. When lawmakers approved it, they didn't hide their intentions. The facility would not rehabilitate. It would contain, control, deter. Silence was the point. Inside, inmates were stripped of names and assigned numbers. Communication was limited. Movement was choreographed down to the second. Labor wasn't meant to produce profit, it was meant to exhaust. Former guards, the few who ever spoke publicly, described a system designed to erase individuality, break habits, break resistance, break men. Crow had interviewed 1 year ago. The guard shook the entire time, hands trembling as he described the sound of boots echoing through empty corridors at night. "You hear things," the man had said. "Not screams. Worse. Quiet." Now, as rainwads are pooled around the body, Crow's phone buzzed. "Crow," he answered. "Elias, it's internal affairs," the voice said. "We need you downtown, now." "Why?" "There's been a development." About your victim. Crow glanced once more at the iron house before heading to his car. At headquarters, the mood was tense. Screens glowed with surveillance stills and document scans. Captain Morales stood at the center of it all, jaw tight. "We ran the victim's fingerprints," she said. "They matched an inmate." Crow felt his stomach drop. "Inmate?" he asked. Morales nodded. "Name was Daniel Mercer. Sentenced 8 years ago. Armed robbery. No fatalities. Assigned to the Iron House." Crow waited. "He was never released," she continued. "No parole, no transfer, no death certificate." "So how did he end up outside?" Crow asked. Morales didn't answer right away. She pulled up a document on the main screen. "This is the intake log from the Iron House. Mercer's file ends 3 years ago. No explanation. Just a status change." The word on the screen was a single line. Removed. Removed wasn't a term used in corrections. Crow leaned closer. "Who authorized it?" "That's the problem," Morales said. "There's no signature." Silence settled over the room. If Mercer had been taken out unofficially, it meant someone with authority inside the Iron House had broken protocol. And if Mercer had been silenced afterward, it meant something inside those walls wasn't meant to be seen. Crow felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the sense that this case wasn't just dangerous, but forbidden. "What else?" he asked. Morales hesitated. "There's more. We pulled traffic cams near the prison perimeter. Someone exited through a service gate last night. No record, no clearance logged." Crow stared at the still image now displayed on the screen. A figure in dark clothing, face obscured, walking calmly into the rain. But what caught his attention wasn't the person. It was what they left behind. Carved into the concrete beside the gate, B, barely visible under the headlights, was the same symbol found near Mercer's body. The room went quiet. Morales broke it. "We're not supposed to investigate the Iron House directly," she said. "You know that." Crow straightened. "Then why am I looking at this?" Morales met his eyes. "Because if someone is being taken out of that prison and killed to keep them quiet, then whatever's happening inside is already spilling into the city." Crow thought of Mercer's frozen hands, the prison dust in his lungs, the erased records. Men entered alive. They didn't leave. Not like this. His phone buzzed again. "Unknown number." He answered. A distorted voice spoke quietly, deliberately. "You're asking the wrong questions, detective, and the Iron House does not forgive curiosity." The call ended. Crow slowly lowered the phone. "What is it?" Morales asked. He looked back at the screen, at the gate, at the symbol. "They know we're looking," he said. And somewhere beyond the city lights, behind iron walls and sealed records, something inside the Iron House had just begun to move. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the city still felt wet like it couldn't shake the night off. The industrial district was back to its usual rhythm. Forklifts whining, trucks coughing exhaust, men in neon vests pretending they didn't notice the police tape that had been there hours earlier. Detective Elias Crow didn't sleep. He sat in his car across from the Iron House's outer perimeter road, watching the prison the way you watch a predator behind glass, knowing the barrier is the only reason you're still breathing. The Iron House of No Return wasn't built to be hidden. It was built to be seen. Even at a distance, you felt it. The blunt geometry, the colorless walls, the watchtowers like sentries from another century. No banners, no slogans, no signs. Just the state seal stamped on a gate that looked like it belonged to a fortress, not a facility. Crow's phone buzzed with a secure text from Captain Morales. "Meeting 0930. Bring what you have. Keep it tight." Crow's hands tightened around the steering wheel. Tight was a funny word in a case like this, because nothing about the Iron House stayed contained for long. At headquarters, the briefing room smelled like burnt coffee and fatigue. Morales stood with a folder in hand, but the way she held it made it feel less like a file and more like a live grenade. "We got a response from corrections," she said. Crow raised an eyebrow. "That fast?" Morales's mouth didn't move into anything close to a smile. Not a response, a warning. She slid the folder across the table. Inside was a letter on official letterhead, stamped with the Iron House seal. Short, cold, precise. "This matter falls under restricted jurisdiction. Any unauthorized inquiry into the operations or records of the facility will be treated as interference with state security protocols." Crow looked up. "State security?" Morales leaned in, voice low. "They're trying to scare us off." "They don't have to," Crow said. "They've built a whole prison to do it." A younger detective at the table, Nina Hovell, spoke up. She was sharp, new enough to still believe systems corrected themselves. "I ran Mercer's name deeper," she said. "He wasn't just an armed robbery guy. There were sealed attachments. 2 pages were blocked, but the metadata shows they were added after sentencing. That means someone updated his file inside the prison system." Crow's eyes narrowed. "By who?" Hovell shook her head. "No author listed, but the access point is tagged. It came from a terminal inside the Iron House." Morales exhaled slowly. So Mercer was flagged for something, then removed, then found dead outside. A tech entered and handed Morales a printout. She scanned it and slid it toward Crow. "Traffic cams," she said. "We enhanced the image of the figure leaving the service gate." Crow leaned in. The enhanced frame was grainier, but clearer. The person wore a hooded raincoat, head down. No face, no license plate visible. But their posture was calm, too calm. Like someone who had walked out of that gate 100 times. And on the concrete beside them, the symbol again. That crooked intersected line, carved like a signature. Crow sat back. "This isn't random." Morales nodded. "It's a message. Or a warning," Hovell said. Morales's eyes flicked to Crow. "We can't walk into the Iron House. Not officially, but we can look at what touches it." Crow knew what she meant. Every fortress had supply lines. Every secret had a leak. They started with the only part of the Iron House that interacted with the outside world. Its contractors, food suppliers, maintenance crews, medical waste disposal. The kinds of boring details criminals and politicians both relied on to keep machines running. Hovell traced a disposal vendor that handled the prison's waste. The invoices were normal until 3 years ago. That's when the frequency doubled. Not by a little, by a lot. "They're moving something out," Hovell said, tapping the spreadsheet. "Or burning through supplies." Morales stared at the numbers. "Bodies?" Crow didn't answer. He didn't want to say yes without proof. But Mercer's lungs full of prison dust made one thing clear. He'd been somewhere inside those walls recently. And if someone went to the trouble of removing him from records, then killing him, that meant Mercer had seen something. Something he shouldn't have. Crow's next move wasn't official. It couldn't be. He drove to a diner an hour outside the city. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed through regret. He was meeting someone who didn't exist on paper anymore. A former Iron House guard named Calder Voss arrived late, sat with his back to the wall, and never took his eyes off the door. He looked older than he should have, like the job had aged him faster than time. Crow slid a photo across the table, Mercer's body bag being wheeled into the morgue. Voss didn't flinch. He didn't need to. "You don't know what you're touching," Voss said quietly. "I know a man who was supposed to be inside your prison ended up dead outside it," Crow replied. "I know someone carved a symbol near his body. I know you used to work there. Start talking." Voss's jaw tightened. "The Iron House isn't a prison the way you think it is." Crow kept his voice steady. "Then what is it?" Voss stared at the coffee cup like it held an answer. "It's an eraser. It was built to scare the public, sure. But the real purpose is internal. Control, experiments, policy tests. A place where they can do things they'd never admit to doing. Like what? Crow asked. Voss's lips parted, then closed again. His hands shook slightly as he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table like it might be. Crow stood so fast the booth jolted. Voss's chair scraped the floor. "They're framing you," he muttered. "That's how they do it. Make you toxic. Make you disappear." Crow's mind raced. Someone had cloned his access, or someone inside the department had done it. Either way, the message was clear. Back off. But Crow couldn't. Not now. He grabbed the floor plan and stuffed it into his jacket. "Where is the annex entrance?" he demanded. Voss hesitated, then pointed to a small mark on the drawing. "Service tunnel, old utility line. It feeds into the west wall. But you didn't hear that from me." Crow turned to leave. Behind him, Voss called out, voice low and raw. "Detective, if you go near that place, don't go alone." Crow stepped into the daylight. His car sat where he left it, but something felt wrong immediately. A faint line of fresh scratches ran along the driver's side door, like someone had dragged a key across it slowly, deliberately. He opened the door and froze. On the seat, carved into the leather with a blade, was the same symbol, the crooked intersected line. His phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. A single text message appeared. "You're next." Crow swallowed hard, eyes lifting toward the distant skyline where the iron house waited, silent and patient. And for the first time, the case stopped feeling like an investigation and started feeling like a countdown. By the time night fell, Detective Elias Crow was officially a liability. Internal Affairs had locked his access. His badge pinged as inactive. Patrol units were quietly told to report his movements if seen. No warrant. No charges. Just a soft exile, the kind that made a man untouchable and unprotected at the same time. That was how the Iron House worked. It didn't rush. It isolated. Crow parked 2 miles from the west wall and continued on foot, moving through brush and broken concrete under a moonless sky. The prison loomed closer with every step, its outer lights washing the ground in a sterile white glow. He could feel it pressing in, like gravity bending towards something massive and cold. The service tunnel Voss had marked wasn't hidden well, just forgotten. A rusted utility hatch half swallowed by weeds. Crow pried it open and descended into damp darkness, the smell of iron and old water thick in his throat. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out. Pipes lined the ceiling, vibrating faintly. Somewhere above him, generators hummed, steady and relentless. This was the spine of the Iron House. Crow followed the tunnel until he reached a steel door, marked only with a number. No warning signs. No cameras visible. He pressed his ear against it. Nothing. He pushed. The door opened into a corridor so clean it felt unreal. White walls, polished floor, fluorescent lights humming overhead, and silence total, unnatural silence. This wasn't a prison corridor. This was a facility. Crow moved carefully, footsteps muted. The first room he passed had glass walls. Inside, a man sat at a metal table, hands resting flat, eyes fixed straight ahead. He wore a prison uniform, but there were no restraints. A speaker crackled. "Subject remains compliant." Crow froze. The man's lips moved, but no sound came out. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. On the wall behind him, a digital display scrolled data. Heart rate, cortisol levels, sleep deprivation metrics. Crow backed away, heart pounding. Further down the corridor, doors stood open to other rooms. In one, inmates shoveled gravel from one bin to another under the watchful eye of cameras. In another, men stood motionless against a wall, arms raised, muscles trembling. No guards shouted. No batons swung. Compliance wasn't enforced through pain alone. It was conditioned. Crow finally understood the Iron House's true purpose. This wasn't about punishment. It was about control. Breaking men down to their most basic responses, measuring how long it took, how much it required, turning human beings into data points. A voice echoed softly through the corridor. "Detective Crow." He spun. A man stood at the far end, dressed in a dark suit that looked out of place among the sterile walls. No badge, no visible weapon, just calm. "You're trespassing," the man said. "But I imagine you already knew that." Crow raised his gun. "Who are you?" The man smiled faintly. "Someone tasked with maintaining order when systems fail." "You killed Mercer," Crow said. "No," the man replied. "Mercer killed himself the moment he tried to leave." Crow's grip tightened. "You erased him." The man nodded. "Removal is a mercy. Men like Mercer were never meant to re-enter society. They'd seen too much, learned too much. You can't put that back in the bottle." Crow glanced at the rooms lining the corridor. "So you erased them instead?" "We refined them," the man corrected. "The Iron House was built during a time of chaos. Lawmakers wanted fear, yes, but fear is temporary. Control lasts." Crow's mind raced. "You're experimenting on inmates. We're studying resilience," the man said calmly. "Obedience. Break down thresholds. The same things corporations and governments have always studied, just without the hypocrisy." Crow took a step forward. "People disappear here." "They don't disappear," the man said. "They're repurposed." A door slid open behind him. Inside lay Daniel Mercer, alive. Barely. Mercer was strapped to a medical bed, chest rising shallowly. His eyes fluttered open when Crow entered, recognition flashing briefly before terror took over. "He tried to warn someone," the man said. "That was his mistake. Curiosity spreads, like infection." Crow moved closer to Mercer. "Daniel," he said softly. "I'm getting you out." Mercer's lips trembled. A sound escaped him raw, broken. They don't let you leave," he whispered. "They let you think you did." Crow looked up sharply. The man in the suit watched him with something like amusement. "We needed proof that the system worked beyond these walls," he said. "Mercer was our test." Crow's blood ran cold. "You released him." "Briefly," the man replied. "Long enough to see if conditioning held. It didn't. So we corrected the error." Crow raised his gun again. "This ends now." The man sighed. "Detective, if you fire that weapon, this wing locks down. Gas deploys. You won't make it 10 steps. Crow hesitated. He believed him. "And even if you did," the man continued, "your department already thinks you're compromised. Your evidence is gone. Your credibility is ash." Crow felt the walls closing in. The Iron House didn't need bars at this level. It built cages out of consequences. "Why tell me all this?" Crow asked. The man stepped closer. "Because you're standing at a threshold. You can walk away and be erased quietly, or you can stay and become useful." Crow laughed bitterly. "You think I'd work for you?" The man tilted his head. "I think you already are, whether you know it or not." A sudden alarm blared, not loud but low and pulsing. The lights dimmed. "Time's up," the man said. "Choose." Crow made his choice the only way he knew how. He lunged forward, grabbed Mercer's restraints, and slammed his elbow into the release panel. The straps loosened. Mercer gasped, eyes wide. The man's expression hardened. That was unwise. The corridor lights snapped to red. Crow hauled Mercer upright and ran. Doors slammed shut behind them. Gas hissed from vents. Mercer stumbled, weak but moving. They reached the tunnel entrance just as Crow's vision blurred. He shoved Mercer through and followed, lungs burning, the sound of boots echoing behind them. They emerged into night air, collapsing onto wet ground beyond the west wall. Sirens wailed in the distance. Crow dragged Mercer to his feet. "Can you walk?" Mercer nodded weakly. "They're watching," he said. Crow didn't argue. They vanished into the darkness. 3 days later, the Iron House issued a statement. Daniel Mercer died during an attempted escape. Detective Elias Crow is under investigation for obstruction of justice. No further comment will be made. The body recovered from the river 2 days after that was identified as Mercer. Closed casket. Case closed. Crow disappeared. Officially. But 6 months later, a journalist in another country received an envelope with no return address. Inside were photos, documents, and a hand-drawn floor plan of a place that didn't officially exist. And carved into the corner of the last page was a familiar symbol. The crooked intersected line. The Iron House still stands. Men still enter. Records still vanish. And somewhere beyond its walls, a man without a badge keeps watching, waiting, because once you know what lives inside the Iron House of no return, silence is no longer an option. If this story unsettled you, remember some doors are meant to stay closed, but others are already opening. If you're drawn to the darkest corners of real crime, the stories meant to stay buried, and the truths that never reach the headlines, subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Because once you step into these stories, there's no ease, way back.